Coming February 1st from a novelist. Beyond Boggy Creek, the epic new book from Lyle Blackburn, author of the acclaimed title, The Beast of Boggy Creek. Explore the history, legends, and modern sightings of mysterious man-like creatures throughout the southern United States. Join Blackburn as he goes beyond Boggy Creek in search of the Southern Sasquatch. Grimerica.
Me, I like to go into the most remote places possible because that's where, if these things exist, that is where, the family unit is going to be. It seems to me that would be a good chance of encountering it or something like that.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. We are going to be chatting with Lyle Blackburn and Seth Breedlove a little bit later about small town monsters and the Beast of Boggy Creek and Mothman and all that fun stuff. We're doing a little cryptozoology, which seems to be few and far between around here, which is a shame. We'd like to be doing a little more of it. And we've got a friend of the show, Cyrus, joining us for the intro, so that's going to be fun. But first, as always, Graham, the prototypical white guy, Dunlop. How's it going, buddy?
I'm privileged.
Yeah, you are the definition of white privilege. Yeah.
Let's not go there. No, it's going good. Yeah, it's going really good. Yeah.
How about with you, Cyrus? Welcome to the Grimerica Show.
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Is this the first time we've had Cyrus on?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Right
Yes.
on. Yeah, it's good to finally chat with you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I've been a fan for years, trying not to fanboy out. But we've had a lot of communications over texting and writing and all that stuff. So
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
And our other collaboration that'll be coming soon.
Cyrus was my tour guide when I was in Seattle. He directed me to the Troll and all that shit. So that was fun.
yeah, the Troll's a good spot, man.
Seattle was awesome, man. I really liked it there. Really,
Yeah,
it's probably the coolest
nice.
city I've ever been in.
Yeah,
I haven't
it's
been in a
pretty
whole
cool.
lot of cities, but I liked it there. And I could see myself living in Oregon. Oregon really does seem to have everything. You got lakes, you got rivers, you got fishing, you got coast, you got forests, you got everything. And no taxes. Or
And the
like
beaches
very
are better
minimal
than
taxes.
Washington State beaches. Yeah, central western Oregon. I drove through there on the way back from California last fall, and I fell in love with it on the way home.
Be growing fucking pot plants like 12 feet tall.
Yeah, Christmas trees.
There you go.
I don't know, man. If I was
going
going to move, I got to go to the heat, man. Somewhere hot.
Nah, man.
Somewhere where you can see the sunrise and
the
set
problem
every
is
day
that
at
when
good
you-
times.
as soon as you get there, you're there with like fucking 100 million other
No,
people.
you're not. The whole like equator isn't populated. There's lots of room.
Most of the equator's third world.
No, but I'm just saying
Actually, I would almost say the equator in its entirety.
there's lots of room down there. It doesn't have to be in California. It could be somewhere else south.
California is nowhere near the equator. What
No,
fucking
I'm just
planet
talking
do you
about.
live?
I'm talking about just sun sets and sunrises at a decent time.
California's halfway to the equator.
Heat and light. We have cold and dark here.
Well, yeah. Oregon's got to be better.
Actually, I shoveled the snow. I'm trying the cold thermogenesis thing. I shoveled my snow in minus 20 in my shorts.
We're getting there. When I leave for work in the morning, like the sun is like the brightness, it's just starting to not be dark out of the far reaches of the horizon.
I really am trying to embrace the elements.
Another couple of weeks and it'll be sunny in the morning. And then the time will change and it'll be fucking dark again for 3 weeks.
And I walk everywhere in the cold too, but
Cold's over now, bro.
just about. But Cyrus, you don't experience this minus 20 degree temperature, do you?
Not here in Seattle. I did in high school. I went to high school in a tiny little town called Troy, Montana. It's about a half hour from Bonner's Ferry.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And my
Bonner's
dad
Ferry?
moved us. Pardon?
I've been there.
Yeah, yeah. Is that where you took the picture of that chicken?
That's
At
where
the
I
ga-
took the picture of the chicken, yeah.
I had a feeling you said Idaho. I'm like, dude, is he in Bonner's? Yeah, high school moved out there my sophomore year. And I remember driving. It was after the first major snowfall. We're driving through the little town, and the guy's walking down the street, and I see his arm is straight up in the air, and I'm like, what is he doing? And I look, and he's walking his dog, but his dog is on top of the snow berm, like 12 feet in the air. And I looked at my dad, and I just shook my head. I'm like, you moved us. We came from Seattle to here? Why? But yeah, it was. I'm glad we did, dude. It's gorgeous out there. They filmed that movie, The River Runs Through It.
Oh yeah.
There when I was in high school, and I lived on that river.
Nice.
Yeah,
There must be lots of fishing and wildlife and shit.
Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty much like Canada.
Yeah, it was 14 miles from Idaho, 50 miles from the Canadian border.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
I used to work at a ranch up there next to the border, north of Bonners. Right on the border. I used to bale hay, and the guy rolls up on a pickup truck once. He's like, "Get in the back." I'm like, "Where are we going?" He goes, "We got to go kill a pig." And I'm like, "What?" And apparently there was this wild pig that would chase the kids at the bus stop every morning. So we went out all day looking for this pig. We never found it, but yeah, dude, it's a whole nother world over there.
Yeah.
Did it just keep chasing the pig?
You moved back to Seattle when you grew up? You said fuck it and went back to Seattle?
Well, sorry. When I was towards my junior year, the silver mine shut down and half the town moved. So it got real dead, and there was no work out there. There really wasn't at that time. This is like 95. So I met a friend's older brother who was visiting, and he lived in Portland. And he was leaving to go home, and I'm like, "Dude, take me with you." He's like, "No problem." Jump in the car, and I just took off. And I started my I've been on my own since I was 15. Wow. So yeah, so I started my working career right after high school.
Sweet.
Down there, and just been floating around, and now I'm a UPS driver up here.
Sweet.
Seattle's a cool city.
Yeah,
it's way cooler than Bonners Ferry. I'm sure Bonners Ferry is cool for all sorts of reasons, but Seattle seems cooler. Bonners Ferry is cooler when the power goes out. The food trucks stop showing up.
Yeah, my best friend, and he's kind of like an older brother to me, but he's like my best friend, Chad. He lives in Bonners. He got a nice little inheritance and moved out there and built a big ass house and bought some property and stuff, living off grid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He bought a generator. He has solar panels, but he bought a generator, and he called me up right after he bought it. He goes, "Yeah, dude, the salesman said the last time he sold one of these, it was to a zoo." I'm like, "What?" I go out there, and it's about as big as my truck.
What does it run on? Like
diesel?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, man. What's going to happen here? I was reading up on looking at Lockheed Skunk Works and some of the stuff that they're working on, and by their website and their programs they have, you'd swear they have clean energy already. It's like they're pretty much working with
clean energy,
high tech, clean and free energy, and it's like, why don't we all have this capability? It's crazy. And
isn't Fukushima all fucked again?
Well, that's the guy you're supposed to get on the show. We're supposed to have.
He's not responding.
Oh boy.
Maybe he's off. I hope not.
Yeah, by the sounds of his communications, that was going to be happening.
Really?
Well, do you remember what he was saying to you?
He called me and all those fuckers or something. I remember that. And then he said sorry because he was drunk. Anyway, I'm sure I'll go back. It's Facebook. That's the only form of communication I have with him is Facebook. So sometimes it's tough. Anyway,
what do you want to hear about?
What do you got?
I got some feedback from some listeners. Lucid dreams and what else? A little mini synchronicity. It's kind of more of a precog, actually.
Let's go with what the fuck?
Is it real or a dream? What does that even mean?
It's kind of a combination, actually.
Of course it is.
Yeah. This is from John. We love getting emails from listeners. So this, he says, lucid dreams. What made me start having lucid dreams? Howdy, guys. Just started listening to y'all a few weeks ago, and I'm totally smitten. I found out about y'all through the Santa Muerte episode. That's interesting. It is cool to hear where people find out about us and how they found out about us. So I keep hearing that Graham is trying to have lucid dreams. Here's what worked for me. I started lucid dreaming in my early 20s, and I'm now 32, with the help of a psychedelic plant called Salvia divinorum, the shepherdess.
You know what's funny? That was Chestnut, wasn't it?
Andrew Chestnut?
Yeah. He chimed in on the education debate I was having today.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. Bunch of mini synchros happening.
His buddy was talking
today
about Amway or whatever, or fucking.
What does Amway have to do with education?
Or something in the Bible schools, remember? And Chestnut just tried it. He's like, I don't think they have those in Canada, bro. He probably doesn't even know what you're talking about.
So anyways, he says, one night I took a large puff of salvia, tripped hard for about 15 minutes and went straight to bed. I became lucid that night and was overcome by an insane feeling of bliss and joyful crying. There were beings there who put magical talisman coins / objects into my stomach. It was a straight up spiritual experience. It was the most amazing experience of my life up until that point. And this was not the first time I smoked salvia, by the way. But after that, I continued smoking occasionally in the same manner and continued having lucid dreams, and not necessarily always the same night I smoked it. I've had dozens of lucid dreams since where I fly, have sex, talk to death gods, and it normally starts with that overwhelming feeling of ecstasy and realization. Holy shit, I'm dreaming, and I know it. Not to mention the experience that reality... I gotta try and find this email here. Not to mention the experiences while on salvia, it's a whole different story. I realized while lucid dreaming that lucid dreaming is somehow realer than waking reality. I realized we are actually kind of dreaming and waking life compared to the reality that is lucid dreaming. I've also had 2 false awakenings as well, which were insane. The last lucid dream I had was actually up in Quebec. I hadn't smoked salvia in 2 years and still became lucid that night. I feel that salvia opened the doors for me, and I haven't had a lucid dream, though, in a few years, nor have I smoked salvia in many years. I'm about to dive back into it. I bought a cache of strong 50 times salvia before it became illegal in my state of Louisiana, because I knew that the time would come when I would benefit from it again. I started up again with that dream journal as well. Also, weed equals not remembering dreams. Weed and dreams do not mix. I've heard you guys talk about this before. Most of my lucid dreams happened while I was taking long breaks from the sweet ganja. Not sure if salvia is legal in Canada, but I had to tell you my story. I don't even know what lucid dreaming was before I had that first lucid dream. I had to read all about it afterwards and realized what salvia had done for me, for I seriously doubt I would ever have these experiences without it. I started writing a dream journal as well, and this seemed to be to help, but no doubt with the catalyst was salvia. Good luck, brother. I sincerely hope you get there, lucid, no matter what path you choose. Seek and you shall find. Love y'all's show. Once I get my tax return in, I'm supporting you guys with some l'argent. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll keep you posted on my future salvia / lucid dreaming reports.
Nice. Salvia reports. I never tried that.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I heard there's a lot of people on YouTube that do it.
Do it on YouTube?
Yeah, they do it on YouTube.
Crazy.
Yeah,
I'd rather just eat some mushrooms.
Well,
but some of those people that smoke the salvia, don't they? I heard that they're just some kids that act like complete fools.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you remember Duncan Trussell? He was talking about sweet Mother Gaia. She's trying to speak to us through mushrooms and those plant medicines. And so we can learn how to communicate with the God in the universe and learn who we truly are in ourselves. Except for the only people she's talking to are 15-year-olds in their basements playing Xbox.
Yeah.
That's fucking funny because I was actually another synchro because I was talking to him. Well, not talking, but messaging with him today.
Yeah, that's a lot of many little things. We're supposed to be here right now doing this.
Like 2 hours ago.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember when I was trying to quit smoking, I was using the Nicoderm patch.
Yeah,
and I didn't read the back of the box where it tells you not to sleep with it on. And I had a dream that I was I was in Australia with like 20 people, guys and girls, and it was like hanging out with 20 of your best friends. Like there wasn't one person there that wasn't my best friend. And we were just traveling around Australia and New Zealand, like doing adventure stuff and having fun. And it felt like it was like a lifetime, right? It's like I grew up with these people. I knew them. I knew everything about them. They knew everything about me. And when I woke up, it took me about 5 minutes while just laying in bed to figure out that, because I was laying there going, where am I? And then it slowly started coming to me that this is my bedroom. And then I realized that whole thing was just a dream. But in the dream, I had lived with these people for years. And I was in a depression for about 2 or 3 days, coming to grips with the reality that not only was I never going to see these people, but they might not exist.
How old were you?
Oh, geez. This was like 8 years ago.
Jesus.
So how long did you, because we were just talking about this tonight too with our guest about dreaming, right? Because I was arguing that it's not like, when I heard back in the 80s, like, oh yeah, you dream this long dream and it's really only 3 minutes. But was there a major time difference for you?
Oh, it was years.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
and that was from the patch.
That shit happens, man. That's the thing. Like I've had it before where I've fucking like drifted off and I'm like, holy fuck, it must be noon. And then you look over at the clock and it's like.
That's different though, because he's living in a dream for that long, right?
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
But I've heard people who have done DMT, like Ari Shafir. Didn't he? Joe talks about it sometimes. That I
might have heard about that before.
Yeah, Ari saying that he had lived a whole nother lifetime in 15 minutes.
But I wasn't even scary to think about.
Yeah, and he says it like a lifetime of complete bliss.
That doesn't sound so bad.
No, that doesn't, right? But when you get
back,
you get pulled back into this version of reality or whatever it is.
This version of bliss.
Yeah. But like for me, it was less. It's hard enough to find a good person that you can connect with. You know what I mean? That you just jive with totally. But in order, like, you find 20 of them, and they're all different, and it was just complete, just everyone having a blast, everyone helping each other out, everyone taking care of each other, and it's just it was the craziest thing. And the depression part, it was serious, dude. I thought maybe I'm like, am I going crazy? Because I couldn't believe how bummed out I was. I'm like, it was just a dream, dude.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. I felt when I've had crazy dreams, I felt a little discombobulated the next day for a little bit. Like sometimes it takes a couple hours to shake it off, but it's never been like days like that. But I mean, I can imagine like thinking that you're in a whole other world with people that you're connecting with, because there is nothing like connecting with somebody in your dream when you just know, because you have this deep knowing of trust. Mm-hmm. You just know that they love you and you love them, and it's just this real like easy.
Sounds like a real fucking love fest.
Well, it can be, because that's part of the whole thing. Like when you connect with a chick in your dream, and you know that you're like connecting.
This is going downhill quick.
Well, for me, it was these people were real.
Platonic love, I think. Yeah. He didn't live with a bunch of chicks that were just banging him all day.
No, I know. I'm not talking. I'm just talking about my experience or other experiences.
I wouldn't have minded that part, but yeah, I never. Yeah, I don't think it ever went there. But it was, like when I was in high school, I have tons of girls that were friends of mine, right? And it's kind of weird, you could talk to them about things that you can't talk about with your guy friends, because they think you're, what are you, what? Especially, Montana guys. They're not the most sensitive group of dudes. And I move out, I moved there from Seattle, and I moved. I don't want to go shoot gophers with you today, dude.
So what I don't get is how your mind can make up that much information, like that many best friends, all different, all unique, all their own story, all your own feelings. Like, that's why I feel like you're in a different dimension of some sorts. Like, you transverse, the normal physical confines of your mind.
Or is it that our consciousness is actually capable to create its own reality?
Maybe it's doing it now.
Yeah.
That's what yeah, maybe, right? Like, you guys, I can't remember.
Do you remember
their
names? Do you remember any of their names?
I did then, like the next couple of days, but they weren't like regular names like Billy or Chad or anything like that. Yeah, I can't remember anymore. It's like the farther I got away from it, the less I could remember. The only dream I kind of remember from front to back is another dream where it was like, imagine a scenery of like this, you're in the mountains of Switzerland or something like that with gorgeous lakes. And we were at like a like a community picnic, but everyone was wearing like futuristic clothing and stuff. Yeah, it was weird, dude. It was weird, but we were all like kids running around with a bunch of balloons and stuff. And it was like a community thing. We were all talking, and I knew everyone there. And then the ground started shaking, right? And I turn around, and there's a wave cresting over the top of the mountains, right? And hitting the backside of the mountains and water. And I look to my wife, and I'm like, I got to go get my dad. And she goes, I know. So I ran home, which was like 10 miles away. But I mean, I was capable of running like 40 miles an hour. And I had this, you ever play Fallout?
No.
Negative.
This is before I ever played that game. You get this Pip-Boy. It's like a giant arm bracelet, right? With a computer on it. And as I'm running, I'm pushing little buttons and dialing something in. And it's like changing, it's turning off DNA or flipping switches with something. It's kind of like CRISPR, right?
That sounds like the Crap Brothers creature suit.
Yeah, I just started booking it. I got home, I grabbed a bag, started throwing all these little gadgets in them. In the dream, I knew what the gadgets did, but in reality, I can't tell you what they are. I put it in this backpack and I grabbed it, and there's like no cars in this world for some reason. So I'm running through the mountains and I'm heading towards the ocean in this city that my dad was living in. And it was a long dream. And it was like a movie that I want to see someday. But anyways, as I got to the town, I climbed this flagpole, this giant pole that was sitting on top of a church or something. And I was hanging off of it, trying to see what was going on, because I knew that this earthquake and this water had come from this area. And it's kind of like a Puget Sound looking area. And there was these 3 giant stone knights standing in the middle of the water but it only went up to their knees, and they were speaking some kind of language, and it was shaking the world and stuff. And I was sitting there trying to figure out what they were saying. And that's when I woke up.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So
that might still come true.
Yeah.
Except you're on the wrong side of the mountains.
Yeah. It called me up. I mean, kind of woke up and I called my dad, and he didn't answer. And he didn't answer. And then later that afternoon, my sister called me, tell me that he had a mini stroke.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah. He had to have a splint or something put in his neck.
That's crazy.
Because you had to go get your dad too.
Yeah, that was what was crazy about that dream.
Yeah.
This one's really quick, but the other dream I had was I have 3 boys, and we were standing in line for a Ferris wheel ride. And my oldest and I were going to get in one of the buckets for the Ferris wheel. My middle son, Alex, was right behind me in line. And then my wife and my youngest, Jonathan, were going to ride in a bucket. And we got 5 people and it only fits 2. So somebody has to ride by themselves, and Evan wanted to ride with me. So I said yes. And so as we we're cresting over the top of the Ferris wheel and start going back down, somehow Alex's bucket gets stuck, right? So it doesn't pivot with the Ferris wheel, and it just dumps him out. And I hear him yell, and I turn around and I go to grab him, and I missed. And I didn't do anything but close my eyes and pray real hard. And then I looked down, and he had fallen all the way down, and he landed in the bottom bucket, and he was down there sitting on Santa Claus had caught him. He was sitting on Santa Claus's lap, and they were waving at me.
Yeah, that one was ending.
That's a weird one. But I talked to a friend about that, and he said, a lot of people, he's one of those dream guys. He likes to kind of help you try to. Yeah. And he says that a lot of people like if Santa Claus might resemble like a Christ-like figure. And he's like, I'd keep my eye out on your middle son and try not to ignore him. So I think it was a good dream because he was pretty young when this happened. And I catch myself, he does get lost in between being the youngest kid, the middle boy. I mean, he's not the oldest, he's not the youngest. Yeah. And I think that dream helped me to be able to. So I'm pretty diligent on being there for him and keeping an eye on him, and so he doesn't feel left out.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Those are some crazy dreams.
Speaking of dreams, you want to hear one from a listener that's pretty interesting?
I might as well play I already did.
This is kind of a synchro, but it's sort of a precog dream, really.
I want a good score for my synchronicity. If Graham reads it out, then Darren might give it to me. Hey, don't you please read it low. Yeah.
So this is from Mike. He says, been a bit behind on listening to the show, but finally caught up today. Recently started a new job which involves more car travel versus flying. So much more podcast time moving forward. It was great to hear my synchronicity read in what I believe was like episode 195 or 196. Darren rated it at an 8.3, which I will definitely take. That's the highest that I've heard so far.
I think there was a 9 before.
Yeah, there's been some higher ones. But on a side note, it's good to hear Darren back to his old self. Oh, yeah, there's... So apparently, I'll just leave that out for a sec. So apparently synchronicities happen to run in the family. Not sure why I mentioned it in passing, but my mom, after I explained the concept to her, she reminded me of experienced something similar about 10 years ago. We were on vacation in Montauk. That's a bit scary on its own. Montauk's, I think it was the home of a CIA program or something, covert program or something.
Was it?
Yeah, anyways.
So what, do you think this is a handler?
No, I don't think so.
We can only have so many handlers, bro.
So he says they're on vacation in Montauk with another family. It's a beach town on Long Island, but we occasionally like to go in the middle of winter. The place is empty and quiet and still relaxing. Anyways, the first morning we were there, my mom comes up to me and says that someone from the other family was sick and throwing up all last night. At first I nodded and went along, but quickly I got to wondering how she knew that. I asked her as much. Did they call in the middle of the night or something? After thinking about it further, she realizes it was just a dream. Not 2 seconds later, we get a knock on our door, and it's someone from the other family who says their daughter was sick all last night and needs to go home today. Apparently, synchronicities, or in this case, I guess, almost more precog, runs in the family.
That fits well with Cyrus's story.
Yeah, that's interesting, eh?
I won't rate that.
No, you don't have to rate it. It's more of a precog. He says, by the way, episodes 208 and 209 were awesome. Great chats with great guests. I've been in the process of attempting to maybe or perhaps write a fictional book. A lot of wishy-washy words added on purpose. And these were both very inspiring. Did you ever get a chance to post pictures of the sun from episode 208 on YouTube?
He won't respond to my emails.
Both reminded me, though, you should really try get Walter Cruttenden on the show. He wrote a compelling book on the binary star theory. So, of course, when your guests for 208 started talking about a brown dwarf leeching energy from our sun, it tied in well. Then your guest from 209 mentioned he recently presented all his work at CPAC, which is the show Walter runs.
Oh.
So yeah,
Synchros with galore.
We'll have to look into that.
Well, I wanted to get into a bunch of that Vault 7 shit and all that.
What is that?
Already running long.
No, we can do it. We can go a little bit longer.
I don't know. Let's let Cyrus run us down on it.
Vault 7?
Word up.
Yeah. Was it? I noticed about the end of last week on Twitter, WikiLeaks had posted a question with a picture of that vault, that seed bank that they have in Norway. And it's supposed to have like all the seeds of all the plants that anyone's ever collected, all the scientists. Mm-hmm. And supposedly it's supposed to be in case some kind of catastrophic disaster happens again, we'll have the plants that to rebuild, or in case a plant or something goes extinct, we'll be able to reproduce the plant from the seeds that they're collecting. I've also heard rumors that it's also a DNA bank. So in a way, this would be another Noah's Ark. And so I've known about that. A lot of people have known about the seed bank anyway.
It's definitely the seed bank. I watched a YouTube video on it the other day. Just fucking filled with fucking shells and shells and shells full of seeds.
Yeah. And
so that was this picture.
Oh, yeah.
What is Vault 7?
It looks like something out of Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
So, and then I'm like, well, everyone knows what that is, but I was like, what are they trying to say? Because, there's people saying that there's going to be an asteroid or a meteor coming in about the 17th of February. So I was like, this is nuts. So I retweeted it saying, what's WikiLeaks trying to say by bringing up Vault 7? And then they had another question. Where is Vault 7? Right? And everyone's trying to figure out what the heck what the heck they're trying to whatever they're trying to say about Vault 7. Then there was another, who is Vault 7? I'm like, all right, this has nothing to do about.
Yeah, where is Vault 7 was all the Nazi gold.
With that, they were testing that jet engine.
That was the next day, which was when is Vault 7?
Yeah, so that's right. And then it clicks, and I'm reading through the thing, and there's, it's Twitter, so there's most of the comment section is pretty, you just ignore it. Yeah, you just ignore it. But Anonymous Scandinavia starts posting some binary code with some programming language in it. Insert 000111000, something like that, right? Into this, and you'll know what we're talking about. So they're throwing out these clues, and he's like, here's another clue, here's another clue, here's another clue. And then someone on Twitter goes, I'm just, all I have to say is 000111000, whatever it is. That's 9/11 in binary. And Anonymous Scandinavia is like, bingo, basically. That's it. So long story short, it looks like WikiLeaks is looking for dumping information that was found on a cold server. So they after 9/11, they try to hide all the information and anything, try to cover your tracks kind of thing. Well, apparently there's a server that was turned off and it's been in cold storage. Therefore, the information was never deleted. They have access to it. They're threatening to leak it out unless the FBI continues on with the Clinton investigation.
And that's coming directly from WikiLeaks?
Yeah, and they're saying that they're going to release it on February 22nd, which is pretty badass. That's going to be my 40th birthday.
Nice.
But
so did WikiLeaks actually come out and say that they're doing, or is that just what the narrative is that's getting put together by like side channels?
That's what it's looking like to me. I don't think WikiLeaks has come out and said we're going to do this, but
they're just keeping it mysterious.
Yeah, but if you look at all the pieces, dude,
Yeah, well, when I look at the pictures, it definitely screams 9/11.
And WikiLeaks sent those pictures?
Yeah, with the question.
Well, where does the seed vault come into it? Why isn't Vault 7 just that Tower 7? Like maybe there's a vault.
Exactly.
Maybe
Tower
there's a
7.
vault in Tower 7.
There was a vault under Tower 7, supposedly.
Remember all the gold?
That's where the gold went missing.
Oh, that's what that story is. Oh, I see.
So there's the vault under Tower 7. It's Building 7. They're calling it Vault 7. And then you've got the gold pictures of the underground gold.
So they're going to probably tell us where the gold went.
You've got a jet engine, and I read somewhere
that's not a jet engine. Well, it's a laser. It's a freaking laser.
No, it's a prototype jet engine.
Yeah, they're testing an engine.
What, that stream is the propulsion exhaust?
Yeah.
That just happens to look like a laser?
Yeah, and then I heard that the jet engine's like the something. Oops. is that engine is called the something 119? I heard.
Which is 9/11 backwards.
Yeah. So then it was Who is Vault 7, and it's a picture of Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, and Bradley Manning.
Whistleblower.
The 3 frogs in the Bible.
And then Why is Vault 7 is the picture of the guy melting the steel.
Yeah, that welding. The guy that does welding, that last picture.
Yeah. And that one's Why is Vault 7.
Wow.
And then that's it so far, but I imagine tomorrow there'll be something else.
Yeah, it's getting real, guys.
Seems like it.
It does seem like it.
But do you
so
think
if that's the case, is like Trump fucking purging it then? Is that what's happening? Is it all a government thing, or is it something different?
I think they're just waiting to this time that now they can open up on stuff. They can start releasing more stuff as well, because Trump might actually deal with it.
Yeah. And
instead of just fucking hiding it under the rug.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my wishful thinking, but it seems like that's what's happening. I mean, there's all these pedophile arrests apparently too, and stuff's happening in the background, I think there is an intelligence agency civil war going on, kind of.
Well, here's the thing. I really feel, I hate to say this because it a couple of years ago, you wouldn't have got me to be in for Trump at all. And when he first got on, like most people, I thought this was a scam. He was only here for either publicity or to help hand off the win to Hillary. That's what I was convinced of, that until he started saying stuff about her. I'm like, well, gee whiz, you don't say stuff like that about your friends. Like, this is kind of crazy. And then I think the biggest turning point for me and a lot of people, because I saw him even do a poll on this, was Scott Adams. He did a poll. People are blaming me for Trump winning. What do you think?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I started following him ever since he got brought up on No Agenda. And so I've become a huge Scott Adams fan. And so I read, his blogs, and I've been studying the art of persuasion and NLP now.
Nice.
Not hardcore, but like really looking into it. So when I hear Trump talk, and like you guys, I don't hear what everyone else hears. And it's not as much about what he's saying, it's how he says it and what reaction he's going to get out of it.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that guy knows a lot of stuff that we might know and consider conspiracy theory or whatever, but he's definitely got some information that most people shouldn't.
Yeah.
I think he's in on this, and with, Alex Jones being on JRE not that long ago, last week, it almost sounded like this coup, like a global coup to help fight against globalists, and the New World Order was formed, and Trump was basically kind of recruited, but became part of it anyway. But about that time that Obama was talking all that smack about him at that one party. Do you ever see that video where Bill Burr's talking about where Obama's up there and he's just talking smack about Trump at some dinner party, and Trump's just sitting there bobbing his head up and down with a smile on his face, just taking the licks. And Bill Burr's like, I think that's the minute right there. That's the moment he decided, I'm going to take your job. You're going to hand me the keys of the White House on your last day.
Lo and behold.
Who would have thought, man?
Yeah. Interesting.
But I think he knows about 9/11 because he obviously knew about those 28 pages that were.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is he's bringing in people and influences from outside of politics, which is, completely new.
Now we better not get into this too much.
Yeah,
we should wrap it up here. We didn't get into the Grimerica.ca/support.
Oh yeah, right.
Of course, we need you guys here. We could wrap it up just like this.
Got to do our begging for support.
If they make you laugh, if they make you cry, if they blow your mind, why not go online to Grimerica.ca/support?
Yeah, all the links are in the show notes.
Yeah,
for all that stuff.
Check out the show notes, Grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for monthly. We just had a couple new subscribers the last few weeks, which is great. We got a new, we had our first 33 subscriber.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
That doubles our budget.
Yeah.
Instantly doubles our monthly budget. No, just kidding. You guys that do support the show.
It's not a budget, it's a cover of our expenses.
Yeah. Isn't that the budget? You budget your expenses?
Well, we have expenses. We're not really budgeting them.
Anyway, check that out. There's a bunch of other stuff in the show notes you can do to help us out. Review the show, spamgrams, send in your stories or synchros, and most of all, tell your friends about the show. Spread the word. Sign up for the newsletter, Grimerica.ca/news.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Cyrus.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the chat with Lyle and Seth.
All right, so tonight in Grimerica, we're going to be talking about monsters and probably the Sasquatch and a bunch of stuff.
Seems like we're due.
We are due. We've wanted to do this for a while. We've only had like one real Sasquatch episode, so this will be fun. We've got Lyle Blackburn here and Seth Breedlove. Seth's he's a filmmaker and he's got a little series called The Small Town Monsters, and Lyle was featured in one of those. He was like the main guy in there, and Lyle's been writing about this stuff for a while. He's a researcher and author. He's written like The Beast of Boggy Creek and The Lizard Man, and he's been on TV about it. So most of our listeners have probably heard about you guys, but it's great to talk to you in person. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet.
We had a meme here in Grimerica a little while ago, and we even had some art. One of our listeners did some art and stuff about that, and it was whether or not you should shoot Sasquatch if you get the chance. And I was the one diving in front of him taking a bullet because I didn't want him to be hurt. And Darren,
those two shirts are still the most popular in the online store. Yeah. It's either shoot Sasquatch, save Sasquatch.
So Darren would shoot him. I don't know. Maybe we should start with that question. I don't know.
That's a good place to start.
That's a absolutely terrifying place to start a show about big. Do you have any idea the debates that rage on internet message boards and across like social media about killing Bigfoot, it's a scary place to go.
Is it really that bad? Yeah.
It's yeah.
Because we came across
it.
For us, we find that to be politics. If as soon as you get like one step into politics, people are like, "Fuck you! I'm never listening again."
Yeah, no. Bigfoot's like the Donald Trump of cryptozoology. It's scary.
You don't go there. You don't.
Yeah, this is a political debate, no doubt, and people take sides and feverishly debate. So yeah, it's a dangerous territory.
Well, the weird thing is, we came across it, I got to say, kind of organically. Like, we were just talking about it, and Darren was, talking like he would.
I was talking about it.
It was really natural.
You got mad at me.
Yeah. Well, because I'm on the one side. I do have my beliefs in that. I don't think we should hurt him. So, but we can go there later, or if at all, we don't have to at all. We should avoid it for now.
I mean, I don't avoid it. If, in my opinion, the only way science will recognize it would be with a body. But, that doesn't mean I necessarily want to go out and plug one myself. So that's my personal take on it.
Well, I don't think you hunt him, but what if you just were out and he walks into your sights? He walks through Seth's sights. There he is. He looks right into his forehead is right in the crosshairs.
So, like, I've literally never looked down a sights other than in Call of Duty and Battlefield 1. So I've never hunted or anything, and I'm pretty sure I don't want to start with a Bigfoot. That's kind of where I stand.
Call of Duty
as far as like if I was.
I think it kind of boils down to that moment, though. That's the thing. It's like, you have your ideas of what Bigfoot is, and you may have all this pre-thought, but from what I judge from interviewing all these witnesses is that at that moment, that's when your whole world changes. You're not only seeing it, but then whether you have the, feeling that it's man-like or too man-like, that's usually what happens.
Right.
The most hardcore hunter. I know some hardcore hunters that, have, taken shots, and it's not something taken lightly. So I think it's one of those things that could be debated, but really it boils down to that moment. And unless you come right up on one, then probably you wouldn't know till that minute.
Actually, Lyle, I was going to ask you about that because you're out there sort of traipsing through the swamp looking for these things every now and again. I think, I I don't know too much about your guys' work, but, there's a thing, and sometimes I go out and do the CSETI thing where we're sort of meditating on contact and UFOs and stuff like that. But there's a feeling in those groups that, like, if you have this subconscious fear, that could hold you back. And everybody thinks that they don't have the fear, but it's like you said, in the moment, you don't know what's going to happen. So do you feel like you're ready to encounter something and like deep down, or are you scared somewhat, or have you even encountered anything yet?
I've never had an encounter, but I'm not fearful of anything. I grew up hunting. My father, was a bow hunter, and all my uncles, and so we spent all the time in the woods. And I did a lot of hunting when I was younger. Once I just didn't have time as I got later in teens and 20s. But so I've been there, and I'm really somewhat of a bulk, and I have I just don't have any fears or whatever. I just go into these places. I'm careful. I've nearly walked up on huge 10 or 11 foot gators, and there's a lot of things out there that, to me, I'm watching out for a little bit more than Sasquatch. And if I had the opportunity to see one, I think I would relish that chance. And I don't think I would be scared, but again, that's a whole nother thing. If I'm out there, and a lot of times I'm out there in the woods, in the dark, in a swamp by myself, and as tough as I may think I am, I really couldn't say until that moment, but I'm usually not fearful. And I'd love to see one if I could.
Man, I got shit scared just remember when I went camping the other couple of years ago, by myself, and I was in my tent in the middle of the night and I heard something walking around. I was just freaking out.
I think you're in your tent as soon as it got dark.
Yeah.
You had cell service, though, right?
Yeah, it's not for the lighthearted somewhat. I mean, that's one thing that, Bigfooting, a lot of it's, for whatever reasons, is done in the dark and stealthy. And to me, it's like if you want to encounter a reclusive, rarely seen creature, you need to go to remote places. I don't go to the state park and camp. That just doesn't do it. Although, you do have sightings of road crossings and things. But to me, I like to go into the most remote places possible, because that's where, if these things exist, that is where the family unit is going to be. It seems to me that would be a good chance of encountering it or something like that. So you almost have to go into their territory, which is spooky, in some ways. I mean, there's been a couple of times I got spooked or whatever, going down a bayou and there's and even with hogs, I've been surrounded by, like 20 hogs, and you never know what's gonna happen. But yeah, I think it's something that like Seth said, ultimately, to prove the thing, I mean, science at this point is going to require a body. They're not going to have had too much nonsense, and I think that's the facts. But whether, me personally, I just would like to see one. I don't go out with the intention of shooting one or anything like that, or even prove it to the world. If I saw one myself, that'd be cool. So I think each person has their own sort of agenda in this, and theories as to what it is.
I just would like it on record that I have no fear either.
Me either.
That is true.
Actually, that's not true. I was saying I was going to fight a mountain lion, but then I watched a video of mountain lion attacks, and I got pretty scared. And I withdrew my previous statement.
I'm terrified of everything. Like when we went to film Boggy Creek with Lyle, I mean, Lyle could tell you, like, me and my guys, we're a bunch of like Yankee boys, like we filmed Boggy was our third movie, and we shot 2 other movies, but we'd never been down in the swamps down there in southern Arkansas, and I mean, we were terrified. At like every stop, we're terrified something's going to get us. Like it's either going to be like feral pit bulls or fire ants or something. I mean, but it's like Lyle said, the last thing on your mind when you're out in a situation like that is like, well, what if a Bigfoot kills me? Like, I mean, I would relish that.
Yeah, it is really, truly. I mean, you're looking out, there's cottonmouths slithering all around, and they're black just like the mud. And, your mind is almost on those things, really. And, but those guys did a great job. I mean, we tried to really take them to the places where you could get the money shots, and they were all game to go wherever and get those great landscape shots. So, I mean, I think they're honorary Southern Swamp Boys now.
Well, that's like if you put a camera in my hand, I tend to just focus on the job. So we were out in Mercer Bayou this one night going down. It was just myself and the guy that was driving the boat, and then one of my other guys. We're in this boat going down the river, and I'm leaning out over the front of this boat with a gimbal and an A7S, trying to film the river kind of coming at me. And the guy's like, you see those bubbles in front of you? I was like, yeah. And he's like, that's an alligator. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like 5 feet away from it.
Yeah. I mean, you get the camera, he gets the camera, and he's like Evel Knievel out there. It's like no fear. And that makes legit films, that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think after talking to so many people about these sightings and encounters? Do you think eventually there will be some sort of evidence, or do you believe that it's more than just some sort of traditional explanation?
Well, for me, I mean, I've been doing this a pretty long time, and it's almost it almost seems like after adding it all up, just any minute, somebody's going to hit one with a car, or going to turn up with one, or somebody's going to get a great high resolution photo. It just seems that way, but it's just right out of reach. It just keeps going on and on. But at the end of the day, I can't say for sure exactly what the creature is. But I've spoken to enough people, and I've got enough people that, the best of the best, the top of the crop, that I can guarantee you they saw something that's unexplainable. There is something to it. There is something out there, a physical primate of some sort, a relic, ape, no matter what it is, that there's something to it. It's not complete, hogwash, so to speak. And so I don't know why it's taken this long to find something other than they must, if they exist, they certainly have to be highly intelligent. They have to be motivated to stay reclusive and, that sort of thing. But I don't know. It seems like any minute now something would come up.
It's been seeming like that too, though, since like the 70s, right? Like that was, you always hear about how people are convinced any minute it's going to happen. And that's like the frustrating thing for me as someone I'm relatively new to this. Like Lyle's been into this a lot longer than I have. And I came in to it, wide-eyed and excited and all this kind of stuff. And there are aspects of being into Bigfoot that will drive you crazy and make you second guess everyone's story and make you super skeptical. But then there's stories like the ones that are in, like Boggy Creek Monster. And there's people that Lyle introduced me to who genuinely made me question whether or not I was being too skeptical of the Bigfoot thing, because I don't advertise myself as a skeptic, but I'm definitely skeptical of a lot of the claims. And some of the people we interviewed in Boggy Creek Monster are like some of it's like Lyle said, like cream of the crop, like the coolest stories, the most down to earth kind of people who you don't think are gonna. I can't imagine a lot of the people we spoke to, if any of them, making a story up. Especially in Boggy Creek, there's a guy named Terry Sutton that we interviewed, and Lyle always talks about his interview as being one of his favorites. And he's just like this really down to earth, successful. I mean, like he's extremely talented. He's a really, just a good guy. And he had kind of held on to the story most of his life. And he told it on camera in the movie. And when you're there listening to him tell it, it's like, it's one of those stories that'll make you wonder, if you're super skeptical, it'll make you wonder about the possibility that there really is something out there. And so that's kind of like, I believe there's something to this. What that is, I don't know. So that's my weird, like, roundabout rabbit trail answer.
Yeah, that's what I think too, actually. I think that I like to give people credit. It's so easy for the skeptical community to say, oh, they must be seeing whatever, a bear, an ape, or some shadows, or whatever it is. But I like to give people more credit than that. I think so many people have seen something that's the amount of anecdotal evidence got to mean something's going on out there. And I don't have any really idea either, or want to say what it is. Could be something to do with consciousness, or who knows, but or just a real Sasquatch. But it'll be interesting, next few years to see what happens.
What really draws my attention to the whole thing is the historical reports, like the reports going back to the 1800s of, like, giant apes and things like that people see in the woods. That is kind of like one of the things that got me into all this, those like old newspaper reports. And the descriptions from the 1800s and early 1900s that were in newspapers back then sound very similar to what people are still describing today. So I don't know how you just write that off as a bunch of people misidentifying bear or getting hoaxed in the woods.
Do you think that there's a possibility that maybe there has been bodies and they've been covered up?
I don't put a lot of credence in conspiracies and things. I mean, stuff like that. People have a hard time keeping secrets, and I'm not sure the reason why they would necessarily cover it up, other than an logging company, trying to keep it a secret. So as far as like grand conspiracies, I doubt it, but it is possible on a small scale that a couple of individuals, possibly found one and not told anybody, or on the other hand, something has been seen or found and somebody dismissed it as a bear. I mean, that's the thing. Oh, how come, hunters never find a dead one? They may have seen a carcass and said, oh man, we're a dead bear, and walked right by it, So it's possible that a body has, been close to being revealed, but was overlooked. So
yeah. What did you mean, Darren? Were you talking more like Smithsonian type cover up, like the giant type conspiracy, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to that stuff much. I can get behind, like Lyle said, I've talked about this before with friends. Like I could buy into like a small scale conspiracy, like some small town sheriff like hides a body because he doesn't want to drive away tourism or something. But like that's actually a really cool idea for a Netflix show that I'm going to have to write down. But like the grand kind of Black Hawk helicopters circling dead bodies, at like Mount St. Helens and running off to the Smithsonian with bodies that get buried forever in the basement. I don't really buy into it, although I love the idea.
Yeah, what do you think, Dan?
I would probably agree. Yeah. I have trouble even with the giants, I'm not saying giants aren't out there, but I have trouble with the Smithsonian covering it up. I just don't see the point.
Yeah, I've actually interviewed individuals who have claimed that they had a body, and shortly thereafter, the Men in Black type folks show up and confiscate everything, the photos, the computers, and all that, and the body, of course. So, yeah, I mean, it's not unlike other aspects of paranormal, UFOs and things, where you've got these MIBs and cover-ups, and it seems either government or some other mysterious agency has shown up, and that certainly pops up in the Bigfoot world. But, in any of those cases, I've put very little credibility in that based on either the person or the story and all that. So there are a few stories like that, but I in my experience, even talking to somebody who's telling me this in my face, I don't see it.
Yeah. So maybe we should dig in a little bit about the Boggy Creek film. So, I did have a question. So the monster from Boggy Creek, like it has the feeling of it being sort of pretty nasty. Is it the same as a Sasquatch, do you think? And then do you guys want to just talk about that film specifically a little bit and sort of give me a rundown of it?
Yeah, Lyle's more the expert on that stuff.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, essentially I've wrote the book on it, so to speak, and that was sort of a case that came to my attention when I was a little kid, when I saw the legend of Boggy Creek. And I live in Texas, but I'm about 3 hours away from Fouke, Arkansas, where all of this took place. And as an adult, and I started writing, I decided that would be a good topic, and nobody had ever written a book on the whole thing. So I set out and spent years researching up in Fouke and got to know a lot of folks up there, and that resulted in my Beast of Boggy Creek book, which kind of, I guess, like a better term, put me on the map of Boggy Creek, and that's sort of my main thing I'm known for. But the nutshell of the thing is in 1971, reports of a hairy, man-like, 7-foot-tall creature surfaced in the area and appeared in the newspaper at the time, and that corresponded with subsequent sightings, and then that brought up the stories that a lot of the old timers back in the swampy areas had seen a creature fitting this description dating back at least 20 years or further at the time. And those descriptions, they essentially describe a southern Sasquatch-like creature. I mean, at the time, and when a lot of this was coming up in the 50s and 60s, they didn't know the term Bigfoot.
Right.
And then even when 1971, when it was first in the paper, they gave it the name the Fouke Monster, Fouke being the small town there, because Bigfoot was just not something that was big yet, and those folks down there didn't correlate with that. But if you look back at it now, you can, it fits right in with Sasquatch sightings all throughout the South and everywhere else. So I feel like, sure, it's a Sasquatch-like creature. I mean, it could be somewhat adapted to its environment. I mean, if you're talking Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest, you've got a creature who lives in a completely different environment, a mountainous region, and down here you've got a hot, humid, swampy pine forest area in the South. So that could account for some of the reasons why the creature has, on occasion, been aggressive. And of course, the Legend of Boggy Creek movie really played that part of it up, and it kind of gave the creature the reputation as it's just on a rampage. But that's not true. I mean, there's many more sightings of just your average glimpse in the woods. It ran across the road, that sort of a thing. There's many more of those than there are instances when it was aggressive. But the sightings, I dated the sightings back to at least 1908 during my research, in uncovering a lot of the stories that had never been told or never been printed in the paper and weren't in the movie. And as well, found out that the sightings have continued. A lot of people thought, the movie was in the 70s and all that was some big thing that went on then. But in truth, the sightings had continued on and on up until now. I mean, I still investigate sightings, and they crop up, every 4 or 5 months. I get a really good one at least. And so that's the basic history of it. And it, because of the Legend of Boggy Creek, because the movie was, this movie was huge in the 70s. This was like making millions of dollars in the theater. It was kind of a Blair Witch type thing where it was made for very cheap and went on to make millions, and inspired people to come to the town and look for the creature. It was big stuff, and it inspired a lot of the folks of a certain age to go into Bigfooting, and a lot of Bigfooters will say, that's what inspired me, that or the Patterson Gimlin films. So It's very famous in that regard, and famous because of the associations of the horror movie, classic horror movie, B-movie aspect. And so that's obviously one reason why the book is popular, and why we would team up to do a documentary, because it's still a fascinating subject.
It's sorry.
Go ahead, Seth. Go ahead.
It's one of those stories that Lyle kind of introduced me to, because I had never even seen the original Legend of Boggy Creek movie until I read Lyle's book. And Lyle's book was kind of like, I think Lyle's book might have even been the first kind of Bigfoot-centric book I ever read. And so it was like the perfect way to get into all this Bigfoot stuff. But what's funny is I didn't watch The Legend of Boggy Creek until like maybe a year before we were going to make Boggy Creek Monster. And so I came at it from a completely different place where someone like Lyle did, where he was very familiar with the Fouke Monster, the Boggy Creek Monster, and the history and all that. I was kind of learning from him going through this, and his take on it, that it seems like it was more the movie that kind of trumped up the Bigfoot creature into this, murderous, rampaging psychopath. That's pretty much what we got, when we were making the movie and hearing these stories firsthand too, was that for the most part, what people are seeing is a creature who seems to be kind of curious, wants to be left alone,
And if people do get a glimpse of it, it's usually because it's either made a mistake and they happen to sneak up on it, or it didn't mind being seen in that moment. But for the most part, we're not hearing a lot of stories of this thing like running at people and ripping their arms off and beating them to death with their own fist or something.
Well, thank God for that. So it's more, it is sort of similar to the other Sasquatch sightings, and that's interesting. So is there people that in that area, like researchers that claim to be in communication with it and are doing that habitual thing or whatever, where they're leaving, little trinkets for them and stuff like that? Like, does it have that level of attention as well, just like on the West Coast?
Yes, there's a few of those where there's, in fact, I was just in Falk yesterday, and, was talking to somebody about something like that, where we've been looking into the credibility of that. But, just like any of the Bigfoot cases, it ranges from, locals that will tell you it's there or have seen it, or locals that dismiss the whole thing. And then you've got various researchers that, come and look, and you've got a few cases of the habituations where people claim they see them over and over.
Yeah. So what?
There's a place there called the Monster Mart that's like right down in Falk, and it's like it became our headquarters when we were filming the movie. And anytime you were in the Monster Mart, someone would come in and have a story relating to like a Bigfoot encounter. So it's extremely popular down there. I mean, everyone's aware of it. A lot of the locals shy away from it, but a lot of them kind of just accept it as part of life.
Man, that's crazy, eh? Like, even where I lived on the West Coast there in Vancouver, we used to go skiing all the time up at Hemlock Mountain, and we used to pass this inn called the Sasquatch Inn, and it was near, you guys probably know of this place now. I'm trying to think of the name of it, Harrison Lake. And I mean, it's unreal how the legends of Sasquatch are just pervasive all over the place. Like, people, building inns and stores and everything centered around it. Like, it's got to say something. There's so much interest. Yeah. So how did you get interested in it, Seth? Like, how did you I know that you met Lyle there, but what, were you interested before?
I got into this back in like maybe 2006 or 2007. I started watching like documentaries and stuff on Bigfoot, and it was just kind of like fun side hobby. And it was not supposed to become something that was. I'm sitting in a room right now, and in any direction I look, there's something with Bigfoot. There's like a giant Boggy Creek Monster banner next to me. There's like a Bigfoot there's like Bigfoot action figures next to me. So, at some point I started a podcast myself, and I did a podcast for like 3 years about Bigfoot. And
cool.
in between doing that, I started making the movies. And I think what my first sort of like research into this was through like historical newspaper archives. And I hike a lot. So like, I don't go out and like knock on trees or take a thermal out or do any of that stuff. But like, I was always, anytime I'd go hiking, I was always looking for something, Mm-hmm. I mean, I was asked today, like, why these cryptids are so popular, like why, and yeah. it seems to be like they're getting more popular.
Yeah. And
I really think with like the state, and this is going to sound, I'm not trying to get like existential or something here, but like
go for it.
with the state of the world and the way people are, and how kind of like unsettling and uneasy a lot of people are, I think it's kind of, it's freeing in a way to like, I don't know, we all think we know everything right now. Everyone thinks they know everything. So it's kind of nice to wonder if maybe we don't know something, if maybe there is this creature out there that we don't know exists. And it's almost like a return to innocence in a way, just to like go out in the woods and look for these things, or wonder, even if you're just out hiking around or whatever, and wonder what's behind that tree in front of you. Like, I think that's a big part of it. I think you can't underplay that, especially with kids. It's always been a big thing with kids, but what happens when the kid grows up and he's still going out and knocking on trees and taking a parabolic mic out? I mean, I think there's something really yeah, it's freeing in a way. Kind of for some people, like some people go to basketball games or go golfing or whatever, and other people go out bigfooting.
Yeah.
That's kind of my take on it.
I feel like it's getting more popular, just like ghosts and that type of thing are, and even UFOs. Like when I'm on Instagram searching for, like, let's say I find you guys on Instagram, and then you go down this rabbit hole where there's just so many little organizations and so many people connecting with other people like-minded. And I feel like for me, there's been so many personal experiences. Like almost everybody knows somebody that they trust and that they love that's had an experience with a ghost or a UFO or a Sasquatch or something unexplainable. And now it's just getting to the point where people are feeling open enough to share it. And I think it's like almost like an organic cultural thing where this would start to bubble over so that everybody just realizes, not everybody, but that the cultural kind of it reached a tipping point where people realize, yes, there's lots out there that we don't know.
Yeah, no, and what Lyle and I do, I mean, not speaking for Lyle, and Lyle definitely does a lot more like actual field research and that kind of stuff and investigating. But I think his work anyway, when it comes to like his books and even the shows he's on and stuff, it's more historical based than it is like, let's get out in the woods and actually find the monster. And in a way, I mean, the historical stuff is just as valuable because if you can identify patterns and things like that sort of data is just as important as going out and recording a sound or something. But our movies are meant to document sightings and cases that eventually will fade away if they're not documented, and they will be forgotten eventually. All even if you just chalk these up as legends, eventually, legends completely change or they die off. And so when I make the movies, the tagline for Boggy Creek Monster was the truth behind the legend, and that was what we wanted to do was show you the actual stories, the real stories from the mouths of the people who were there to experience encounters with the Fouke Monster or who knew people who encountered the Fouke Monster. And so when, 20 years, 30 years from now, if people are still talking about the Fouke Monster and it's gotten to the point where the Fouke Monster was really this like dragon who was, blowing fire and destroying towns, they'll be able to watch our movie and say, okay, well, here's the reality behind that.
Yeah. How far is that from Mena, Arkansas?
It's about 100 miles.
Too far.
So the Mena is in the southern part of the Ouachita Mountains there, where there is another significant pocket of Bigfoot sighting.
In Mena, there is, really?
Well, not necessarily Mena, the Ouachita Mountains. That's I rate that as right up there with Fouke is the best place in the South if you want to see the possibility of seeing a Bigfoot.
And that's so down there, and that's swamp country. So those are like the swamp. I guess skunk ape, swamp apes. Did the Boggy Creek have the smell and all that too?
Some of the reports, people report an odor. Some don't. Most don't. But there are, just like skunk ape sighting. I mean, I got plenty of reports from Florida where people say they didn't smell a smell. So I don't think it's a consistent thing, and it's the same thing in Boggy Creek.
Just like people.
But and what Seth was saying about the history. I mean, I think that's my contribution, my main contribution in my role in the Bigfooting canon is the historical accounts, because I'm probably not, I don't flood the internet with here's some recordings of me wood knocking and all that kind of stuff. I'm more about the big picture of a certain case, and I just basically did it in book form. And like he said, the Legend of Boggy Creek, before I wrote the book, people didn't realize in general that the sightings had continued, and I sort of opened the door to create almost more of a credibility to everything that's gone on down there by looking at what was really going on and just documenting the whole story, rather than everybody trying to glean that from a movie that is certainly based on real reports from real people, but it does play at the sensational aspects of it. So unless you go down there and start digging around, you're not sure, where is the actual truth and where is the actual movie part. So that was my role, is to do a serious look at all this and to just tell the story. It's fascinating, no matter whether you prove it or don't. It's a great story. And then, the next step to that was Seth coming along and being the filmmaker that was doing the same thing visually, and then just took it to the next level by putting these witnesses there to tell the stories themselves, instead of me retelling in the book. Then, you can hear it for yourselves. And that's really great that we've, that the documentation, so to speak, for this case has just increasingly become better. And if you were to read my book and you were to watch this movie, I can't imagine most people anybody coming away and just going, that's all a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
You can't. You just say, holy, there's something going on there,
Yeah.
Lyle, how many sighting reports personally from that area have you taken? Do you have like an estimate? You've told me this before, but I can't remember what you told me.
I'd say at this point, I probably got a good, at least 50, pretty first person or close relative reports. And then, there's probably even in that small area, probably 150 rough sightings, but I'm probably up to about 50 reports now or so, spanning the years. And of course, a lot of these folks, have passed on. So, some of it I can interview them, or some of it I've documented other ways. I got several more stories yesterday. Every time I go to Falk, in fact, yesterday I had a great time sitting in the home of the gentleman who played the monster in the original Legend of Boggy Creek. And, in any conversation, eventually, I do know these guys, and boom, he throws some other stuff at me that I'm sitting there writing down, that often correlates with what somebody else has told me, and I just sort of connect the dots and sort of cross and compare and try to create as best I can, an accurate timeline of sightings, which I have on my falkmonster.net site, actually, in a chronological order.
That's when I first went down to Falk, like Lyle took me and my dad out for a drive, basically for like 2 hours. He just took us around to like all these sites, like the kind of the point where Boggy Creek begins, and like just all these different landmark sites. And at one point he said to me, you stand as good a chance seeing a Bigfoot just driving around on our back road down here as you do like going out in the woods for weeks on end and, trying to have an encounter, because like there's so many road crossings down there, and we go into, the road crossings and all that in the movie, but like there's all sorts of encounters from people who have no desire to see one of these things. Like they're not out like trying to have an experience. And most of these people, like if you go down there, they have no interest in like bumping into a Sasquatch while they're, driving home from church or whatever. But it just seems like I've never been in one area or heard so many stories in one single area. And it's literally instant. As soon as you walk into the Falk Monster Mart, and I've done this probably 3 or 4 times now, someone within like a minute of you walking in that door, if they know who you are, they know you're like, oh, you're making a movie about Bigfoot. Well, check this out. Like my brother was driving down the road like 5 minutes from the Monster Mart down here on the road, and he saw one cross this bridge. Like, I mean, when every single time I walk in that place, someone's telling me an encounter story, and they're not like trying to wow you with it. They're not like check me out. It's just like super matter of fact. I mean, it's one of the most unique kind of places I've ever been to because of this fact. Like if you're an extreme skeptic of Bigfoot, I would highly recommend a trip to Falk to kind of I don't know, to kind of make you wonder what's going on.
Is there kind of the same sort of place in the Pacific Northwest that you would say is there like a Pacific Northwest Val? Because that's a whole lot closer to us.
Yeah, I mean, if you went down to Willow Creek or Mike Rugg's Bigfoot Museum, or probably a Bigfoot bookstore, and that all those areas down there, yeah, it's the same kind of thing. Everybody, it's part of the culture, and it's such a topic of conversation. Even if the person themselves hasn't seen anybody, they've had enough conversations that their uncle, they've talked to their uncle, they've talked to a friend. Everybody, I'm sure, has it's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Well, this is 6 degrees of Bigfoot in those hubs. I mean, everybody's gonna have a story, and like Seth says, I mean, literally. And I've been to Falk years, and it's the same thing every time. You're like 5 seconds, and there's some story, to be documented and to be looked into. Now, not all stories I've heard do I take stock in. I mean, there's the ones that get tossed out. But like you said, most of it is just very matter of fact. These are good people. And when you ask them to be on film or do anything, they don't want no part of it. They just like, no, that's just simply what happened. And there you go. You boys have fun. And then they just walk off.
Willow Creek's only 7 hours and 45 minutes.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what about other types of monsters? Like, it seems like when it comes to Bigfoot, things like Boggy Creek, they kind of sort of have their own little name for it as the legend grows up. But what about stuff like Mothman or any other monsters? Are you guys interested in those? Or do you think there's the same amount of credibility for those type of sort of unique species, or for a lack of a better word?
We're actually making a movie about Mothman right now. It's like the 4th small town monsters movie. It's called The Mothman of Point Pleasant.
Oh, sweet.
And Lyle's executive producing
nice.
that one. So yeah, I mean, I'm super into all cryptids and ufology. Our 5th movie we're making later this year is going to delve into ufology too. So like I'm into a lot of different subjects. As far as like, this is what I keep getting, because I'm still in the process of post-production on, actually production even. We have one more weekend of filming on Mothman, but I'm just getting into like post-production, and everyone wants to know, well, like, do you believe in Mothman? And when like it comes to what you're talking about with Mothman, there's so many different descriptions from so many different witnesses in Point Pleasant back in 66 and 67 of like what they saw, that I don't even know what Mothman, I don't even know where that begins, because like that term Mothman was created by a newspaper man. The early witnesses were just describing seeing a large creature, a weird creature. And then it became this kind of like, over glamorized, trumped up thing. And over time it's become a pop culture. I mean, it's the perfect kind of example of what I was talking about earlier, of the legend becoming something completely different. Like, I feel like Mothman's morphed into something completely different from what it started as. And I'm not saying there isn't some honesty in that, because like our movie will delve into like the paranormal aspects of it and all that kind of stuff. But as far as if I believe in a Mothman, I think that a lot of the witnesses down in Point Pleasant were seeing something really weird. They described a 6 foot tall creature, man-like bird creature with basically eyes in the center of its chest, and a 10-foot wingspan. So I don't know. When it comes to delving into the Mothman stories, I just love the stories. Like, I can't get enough of hearing these stories and documenting stories for myself, because I find that over time, the more stories I collect and the more stories I hear, I can start to form some sort of opinion, for myself. But when it comes to Mothman, you're hearing so many different descriptions. We have a guy in our movie who claims he woke up in the middle of the night and saw a Mothman standing next to his bed. So the descriptions of what people were seeing down there were so varied, and disappeared. But that's a long way of answering that. Yes, I do. I'm very into all cryptids. I want to make a movie about lake monsters and all sorts of stuff. I love this subject. I think Lyle's kind of the same way.
Yeah, I mean, these others are just as fascinating. I mean, they're obviously harder to explain in logical, biological terms when you start getting into, Mothman, lizard men, things like that. Now, lake monsters, of course, seem, right up there with Bigfoot. They seem somewhat plausible and very possible. So it's just a whole world of cryptozoology, not just Bigfoot. The second book I did was a study of this Bishopville lizard man case, sort of a modern creature from the Black Lagoon, so to speak, from Bishopville, South Carolina, in another swampy area. And again, it's like, well, I'm not out to necessarily prove this, and it certainly can't, but the stories are just fascinating. Just the stories unto themselves. And I think we both have that appreciation that the small town, the spooky sightings, the unexplainable creature, and it's just fascinating to explore these regional cases, because there is so many of those. I mean, I've got a list of literally hundreds of cryptids. Some of them all kind of fall into the Bigfoot category. Some of them fall into other types of humanoid type creatures, and then of course lake monsters. But the list just goes on and on. I could write books and we can make movies until the end of time, really, if we can get witnesses.
You guys will have to come down to Lake Okanagan and when you do your sea monster one, for the Ogopogo.
Heck yeah, that's one of my favorites too. Ogopogo is cool because it's like a huge serpent, whereas Champ, you think of like Champ and stuff, and it is kind of like that classic plesiosaur, Loch Ness monster type. But Ogopogo is one of my favorites because it's so unique looking.
And you have to wonder if all those lakes up there aren't connected too, right? It would be so easy for them to just be in one and out the other. They're so deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are, and of course I don't have a lot of lake monsters down here in the South. A lot of the lake monsters are in the northern half of North America. Once you get up there's so many of those deep, dark, huge lakes that nearly all of them have some amount of reports. But I think Ogopogo ranks right up there with Champ as some of the most credible, some of the longest history of it. A colleague of mine, John Kirk, has done a lot of research, and he lived there, lives in that area. So, there's some connection of a personal accounts that I've, been able to hear from those areas. And I think it's that's one of the best, of the lake monsters.
So when will this Mothman movie be coming out, Seth?
Mothman is coming out on June 2nd, I think, and then we're going to kind of have the big screen debut at the Mothman Festival, which goes on every year here in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, kind of cryptid festival around. It's this past year the attendance was 12,000. So. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like the town only the population of the town is only like 3,000. So it's insane. It's they crowd into the downtown area, and there's a Mothman museum, and I mean it's big. It's big in Point Pleasant. They love the Mothman, and it's been it's one of the challenges of making the Mothman movie is the fact that Mothman's been covered multiple times, across many different media, obviously a lot of documentaries and television documentaries. As far as actual movies, I can only think of Eyes of the Mothman, but there have been some really good television documentaries about Mothman. And that was like one of the challenges coming into this for us was like, well, what are we going to bring to this that, hasn't been brought to it? But I think at one point, Brandon Dalo, who does the music for our movies, he told me, I think we'll just kind of bring our own voice to it. You know, like we have a very specific style of telling these movies, and we have a way of like just showing up in a place and things kind of working out in our favor as far as like digging up new information. And that definitely has happened with this story. And we're also managing to get our hands on like some original audio interviews from people who've passed away. So we've got a video interview with one witness who's passed away, and then we have, I think, 3 or 4 different audio tape interviews with people. Maybe I think 3 or 4 of our witnesses have never even been in a movie about this, even though they're frequently cited as being, you know, involved in the case. So it's going to be a really cool kind of somber chronological look. You know, like Lyle was talking about the timeline of the Falk monster. That's something I wanted to see done with the Mothman, because the sightings of the Mothman took place over this period of time from like 1966 to 1967. And I was fascinated when I was reading Keel's book by the fact that the sightings seemed to be like one on top of the next for a year, for 13 months. And then it all kind of culminated with that collapse of the Silver Bridge, which, you know, isn't tied to the Mothman, in my opinion, but I wanted to be able to include that in the film. So our movie is basically a look at a small town kind of going mad over the course of 13 months. Wow. Not that I'm saying people were crazy or anything, but I think so much weird stuff was going on in the town during that 13-month time that it felt like there was something, like everything was escalating towards something in Point Pleasant during that period of time. And then the bridge collapsed. And I think for a lot of people, they felt that was what everything was leading to. So I want to document that in our, you know, special way, and hopefully get some of these people on camera who've never had a chance to tell that history and really delve into the Mothman stories in a way that hasn't been done before.
I seen my only real knowledge of the Mothman was from the movie with Richard Gere.
Yeah, I saw that movie. That movie was my introduction into like the paranormal and in general. I really had never thought of any of this stuff like cryptids or any of that as a reality. It was always just kind of this goofy topic. And then when I watched that movie, that kind of was, I credit that movie with being like the thing that might have opened the door for me to get into all this stuff. Because for whatever reason, I loved that movie. I still love that movie. I own it. But like, I watched that movie 6 times at the Dollar Theater with some friends of mine. We just kept going back. So it's like one of those things that I think got me into this stuff. Kind of like Lyle with the Legend of Boggy Creek. I apparently am like that with the Mothman prophecies.
Well, it's a good movie. That's one of the things. I mean, it's not really about the sightings of Mothman in that way, but using that as an influence to create an individual experience and tie in the truth of the case. And it just ends up being a really good movie. And, you know, they don't show the Mothman, they don't cheese it out, and they keep it spooky. And so it's a very effective movie. And certainly as far as cryptid influenced movies, it rates right up there in the top. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's just a great treatment of that spooky case. So,
Are you guys going to keep working together on UFOs? Like, Lyle, are you interested in that as well? Like, what are you going to how are you going to focus on that huge topic, Seth?
Oh, I think the way we focus on each topic is just very ground level and go into one small town kind of sighting and then build out from there. So that movie's called Invasion on Chestnut Ridge, and it is going to be different from our other movies because it's not going to focus on just one monster or one type of monster. We have a few different phenomena going on in the Chestnut Ridge, and it'll start kind of with the Kecksburg UFO crash in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, and then build out from there and kind of draw off of a lot of the research of a guy named Stan Gordon, who documented a whole mess of like weird cases that went on back in 1973 and kind of all the way up till today. But I know I just spoke to someone today, and I know for a fact we're going to have like a Thunderbird sighting witness in the movie, and we're going to have people that saw Bigfoots carrying like glowing spears and all kinds of weird stuff. So it's going to be very unique from our other movies, very different from our other movies. But it'll definitely kind of delve into a lot of different subjects that I've wanted to explore. And obviously, you know, like as far as I can't speak for Lyle, but the experience of working with Lyle on Boggy was one of the highlights of my year, like last year. So that's why I asked Lyle, do you want to, you know, continue to be involved with us moving forward? So I know he's on board for Mothman. I'm hoping I can convince him to stick around for Invasion and then whatever comes after that. But it's a big year for us. We're producing 2 movies this year. So
I wonder.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for me, to just kind of answer that about, you know, I think the role in other movies, you know, just varies depending on the movie. Obviously, with Boggy Creek, I'm very much involved in that movie because I'm also the guy who is the main researcher or bringing the information to the case. Whereas in Mothman, I'm certainly very familiar with that case. I've been there, but then the role becomes more, you know, I possibly narrating it. You know, I narrated the Boggy Creek Monster, and it's just as well. I mean, I've spent my whole life watching these sort of documentaries. I'm skilled in various aspects of visual and audio entertainment. So it's just one of those things, whatever the role is, whether that's just bouncing ideas, adding to the narration, or working on the actual narration script. And, you know, that becomes the cool part about it. And the cool part about working with Small Town Monsters is something, finally, I don't have to do everything myself. There's a capable group of guys that do those visuals that, you know, I mean, I'm capable, you know, writing a book and doing that. But if I want to get into films, I can't do everything. And I certainly can't continue to write books and do films. The only way I could get my hand in any kind of films is if I'm joining forces with somebody who is able to do that part, and then bringing to the table whatever skills I have, such as the written word and helping with narration or whatever it calls for. And that would also be a case for any sort of a UFO or a thing like that. Whereas I don't have a file of UFO things, but I can certainly, be involved in a filmmaking about a strange incident, because everything I write about is strange incidents. So it's not far removed from daily life, other than I don't, you know, I like UFO subjects, but can't research everything.
It seems like you guys have a similar style of not really going into it with an agenda or trying to show the scary aspect or trying to disprove it or prove it. It's very just sort of centrist, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of like our approach is very similar, and I think that's why I responded to Lyle's book so much. The Beast of Boggy Creek was his kind of like his take on it is very similar to mine, and I think we try to keep everything ground level, and you know, these stories in themselves are pretty terrifying. You know, when you're hearing someone recount seeing a glowing red-eyed flying creature, you know, chase their car late at night, or, you know, a guy or girl see a hairy man-like being in the woods. I mean, those stories on their own are pretty terrifying without, you know, throwing in a guy in a suit chasing people and ripping their arms off or whatever.
Yeah.
What about the Flatwoods monster? Is that one? Is there still people alive from that?
That would be one of my dream movies. Like I always say, Flatwoods and Momo are two of my dream movies. The problem with Flatwoods is Momo's the Missouri monster, but when it comes to Flatwoods, I actually have a painting of the Flatwoods monster on my wall that I'm looking at right now. But like the original witnesses, for the most part, are gone, have passed away, because that story took place in the 50s, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of those original witnesses are gone. But we are going to at least mention it briefly in the Mothman movie, because Flatwoods, I think that's Braxton County. It's only maybe 3 hours away from Point Pleasant. So it's actually fairly close to Point Pleasant. So I have to, at the very least, pay homage to the Flatwoods monster in our Mothman movie.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's a cool case too. Yeah, that's one that I've actually written some stuff on that one. So yeah, it's fascinating.
Isn't that one, some people actually think it might have been some sort of mechanical object? Have you heard that one?
It's like I mean, from my recounting of it, it's like this weird cylindrical, almost like whatever the being was, it almost looked like it was in some sort of object, like a robotic suit or something. Am I wrong, Lyle?
No, that's right. Yeah. I mean, there's a few different interpretations over the descriptions and what the witnesses took away from that. But yeah, I get that impression that it could have been something that was in a suit, or robotic, or very, very extraterrestrial in nature and monstrous at the same time. So
very Cold War era, like Earth versus the flying saucers type of thing, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, I just had this feeling of when I was a kid watching the $6 Million Man. There was this episode, and it scared me as a kid. Like this was freaky to me, and it was that, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that or remember it, but it was this UFO shaped, like almost this was it like a teardrop shaped, like sort of metal object in this field, or it was actually roaming around the town, and $6 Million Man like couldn't fucking do anything with it, and they kept like hurting him and beating him up, and he couldn't stop it, and I was just like freaked by this sort of semi-technological fucking UFO thing terrorizing people.
Yeah. I've never seen $6 Million Man, but I'm well aware of it because of the Bigfoot episode.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. I gotta look that up and watch it.
Yeah, I don't.
I've also never seen the $6 Million Man.
I watched that as a kid, but yeah, that's I don't recall that episode, but the Bigfoot episode, of course, that was like one of the greatest things that like happened ever. I can't remember. That was like, I mean, I was so small that when that came out and stuff, but all I know is that it was Bigfoot. It was on a TV show, and that was like it was like a grand event. But I can't remember a darn thing about seeing it.
Mine was, I can't remember if it was X-Files or Unsolved Mysteries. It might have been Unsolved Mysteries, and they had this one about these little weird black spidery things that crawled around on your ceiling. And then for like the next 5 years, I always had to I was scanning the ceiling while I was lying in bed, like constantly.
Yeah, Unsolved Mysteries, that spooked me a lot when I was a kid, because just the way they delivered those stories and I don't know, factual and the narration, they were spooky. I always loved horror movies, and that's what I always say. I always loved monsters and horror movies. That stuff never really scared me. But man, if I stayed up late and watched Unsolved Mysteries, or if I saw when I saw the Patterson Gimlin film when I was a kid, I mean that, or a show about ghosts and stuff, that freaked me out, because I'm like, this could be real. I mean, I could be in the woods and see that thing, or I could go to my great grandmother's house that was built in the 1800s, very creepy. I could see a ghost. That was, that scared me. Movie monsters, not so much. I loved them, but never scared me. And I still have that sort of a fascination and enjoy that kind of spooky aspect of this stuff, just like I did when I was a kid. And that's, hearing these people tell this stuff, this is real life. This isn't made up. And, that's what makes it kind of exciting, is the sort of
mystery and the spookiness of it. And I think my books definitely show that. I like the somber approach that's going to be used in the Mothman movie. I love that, and that's kind of what I also portray in my books. It's factual. I don't have to play up the story. They're spooky unto themselves,
Seth, do you think, regardless of all the increased interest that we were talking about earlier, do you think that people are changing their mind a little bit? Or do you think that skeptical people are opening up at all? Or do you think the culture is changing at all for a more of a mainstream acceptance?
Man, I don't know. I think there's a lot of, it's going to be interesting when the current generation of kids grow up, because a lot of these kids are growing up with shows like Finding Bigfoot and even stuff like Mountain Monsters, and they love it, and I talk to kids constantly who come to see our movies who love Bigfoot and are convinced Bigfoot's real, so what happens when that generation grows up? As far as when I make my movies, I always make my movies for my wife's grandpa, because he's like this age. He's an older guy, he's a hunter. He's been out in the woods his whole life, and he kind of laughs off the idea of Bigfoot. He really does. He'll just laugh it off. And then if you get him alone, though, he'll tell you these stories about hearing weird noises in the woods, but he hates popular culture take on Bigfoot. So he just laughs it off. But if you can show him something realistic, he'll sit and watch it, and be utterly fascinated by it. And so whenever I make my movies, I kind of target him. And if we can reach a larger audience, I think we could at least open people up to the point where they could consider it. And that's all we really care about. I don't care if you believe or disbelieve when you watch the movies, or even after you watch the movies. I'm not attempting to convince anyone that Bigfoot exists, because I don't know for myself. But I definitely want people to treat the subject with some measure of respect and understand that there is something really kind of cool about all of this, really, really that deserves to be looked into a little more seriously than it is.
Yeah.
Word up.
What do you think, Lyle?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the thing, and I think one reason I've, people appreciate my work even prior to the films is I don't try to persuade people. I don't try to beat them over the head with anything, and I can also understand the skeptical position that people have. I can understand that, especially somebody who hasn't really looked into the research. So if I can convince that, if I can come across with that average person and leave them with the feeling that, hey, there really might be something to this stuff, then I think I've done my job well, because you don't want to be off-putting or turn them off by trying to preach at them or have an agenda of telling proving Bigfoot or proving cryptids. It's just tell the story, and if you tell it in a very down-to-earth way, and you present the facts as facts, and don't make too many crazy leaps of judgment, then people do kind of pay attention and look for that larger audience. And that's the way I've always written my books. I don't write them for the Bigfoot researcher guy. I write my books for anybody who's likes either spooky books or books about mysteries, or books that maybe they love the outdoors and the unexplained things that you may find in the remote reaches of woods, or whatever that is. That's what I write my books for, and I think that's been a good approach in all this.
Yeah, that's well said. So where can people catch up? What's the easiest place for people to catch all this stuff? You got some stuff on Vimeo, right, Seth?
Yeah, we're on Vimeo on demand, and we're on Amazon Instant Video, and DVDs and stuff are available through our web store, which is shop.smalltownmonsters.com. And then there's a smalltownmonsters.com website that is needing updated, which we're working on. And there's a Facebook page. It's just where I'm kind of directing everyone to right now is our Facebook, or really any of our social media like Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff, because we're running a Kickstarter campaign to actually fund the production of the Mothman movie. So I kind of like try it. So
okay, well, that's good to know. So
that's everything.
Yeah, that's good to know. I can link to all that. And then Lyle, do you have another book coming out as well beyond Boggy Creek or something like that?
I do. As a matter of fact, it is coming out tomorrow.
No way.
It's called Beyond Boggy Creek, in Search of the Southern Sasquatch. And in this one, I sort of started at Boggy Creek with a premise, obviously, that the most famous Southern Sasquatch case, is the Fountain Monster. But as you travel up and down those waterways that the creatures have been seen on over the years, you quickly find other cases. And so I expand out all across the entire Deep South and look at the history of Sasquatch sightings in those areas, from, the old 1800s reports all the way up to modern sightings, and sort of just end up in Florida, where I was recently out there and talk about the Skunk Ape case. So it's it's the most broad book that I've done yet. And, when Seth gets a hold of this and reads it, there's going to be, I feel like we're going to have to make a lot more movies. We have a lot more regional cases that are really, really cool, and some great, like you've got the Boggy Creek Monster, the Fountain Monster, the Flatwoods Monster, all that sort of thing. I mean, I've got a list of hundreds of those sort of regional names for these kind of creatures that I researched over the years. So that comes out tomorrow, and you can find out all this stuff on my site, lyleblackburn.com, lyleblackburn.com. And of course, that has links to the information on my various books and projects. And, my books are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Nook, ebook, iTunes, any flavor that people like.
Oh yeah, we're getting that reminds me, we are working on Beast of Whitehall. Should be available on iTunes and Google Play in the next month. That's the other thing. I keep forgetting to mention that. So we're working on getting these out there in a larger, to a larger audience. It's just that we're completely independent, so getting this stuff done is extremely difficult when you're doing everything yourself.
Yeah. And that one was it was a short film that you kind of made on a whim almost, right?
Yeah, we made it for, I say we made it for under $500. It essentially was the very first thing I actually shot and edited all by myself. Minerva Monster was our first film, but I didn't really shoot any of it. And I didn't get to be involved in too much of the editing, but the Beast of Whitehall was the first thing I ever did. And, it's taken on a life of its own. So it's kind of cool. It's getting out there, but, Boggy Creek should be much wider available, available to a much wider audience later this year. We're kind of just now pushing it out into the film festival circuit. So it's got some film festival screenings coming up in the next 2 months. It's got at least 3 that I know of. So it's going to start to balloon.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Right on. Well, thanks for coming on, guys. You should come back on maybe again when you get into the UFO stuff and all, and we'll chat about that.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, let me know if you guys want to come do a show on my kids.
Want what?
A small town monster.
Oh, small town.
Get it?
Yeah. Way to ruin the joke.
Yeah, sorry, buddy. It's over my head.
Okay, yeah, it's on the list.
4 feet tall.
It's the Pukwudgie. A dwarf-like creature in Huckamuck Swamp. That's another story.
What's it called?
A Pukwudgie? Yeah. It sounds like this got to be Canadian. You think that'd be a Canadian monster, Canadian dwarf?
You're a Canadian dwarf.
I'll be playing hockey tonight. I'll get a Pukwudgie. Right on, guys.
It should also be mentioned that I write for the great Canadian horror magazine Rue Morgue, which is out of Toronto.
Oh, right on. I didn't realize I was Canadian.
We don't We don't really recognize Toronto as part of Canada. It was.
Oh, whoops. Well, see, I don't know any. I live in Texas. What do I know?
We'll trade you Toronto. We'll trade you Toronto and Ottawa for Washington State or Alaska, either or.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, guys, and yeah, we'll check out the new books and the new movie, and yeah, come back anytime.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay, have a good night, guys. Thanks.
Bet.
And that was our chat with Lyle and Seth. That was a good one.
Yeah, I like what they're
Monster
doing.
ones are always fun.
Yeah.
I like the storytelling approach.
Yeah, I like
because
the
then even
down-to-earth
if it's, then I can watch it. Whereas I can't watch Finding Bigfoot or these guys banging on trees or throwing rocks. That thing, night vision, it's on for, Lisa will put it on sometimes because she thinks I would like it. That's just like, no, change it.
Really?
Change it, yeah. But I can sit and watch something, even if if I'm not believing it, if it's good storytelling, it's just that much easier to just sit through.
Well, we didn't get into it, and I should have asked them, silly me, but they did have some footage at the end of one of their movies of some sounds that was pretty interesting. Where, because on these shows that you're talking about, you never really get anywhere, right? There's nothing really to discover. They never see anything.
No,
but these guys actually did on the end of their filming. They got some weird sounds.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was a good one. So big thanks to Lyle and Seth for coming on the show. Check out the movies, check out the books, all that fun stuff. These Sasquatch are all over the place. I wonder if they're different races. I wonder if Sasquatch are racist. I wonder if the Pacific Northwest
they're chilled
Sasquatch
out. They're
is
chilled out. They're chill.
Fuck those stinky ass skunk apes down in
angry
Florida.
southern Sasquatches getting all aggro.
Yeah. Probably
What
not.
if they meet anywhere in the middle, like in Colorado or something? They have a big Sasquatch summit.
It's in Colorado.
Yeah.
That's what the airport's for.
Yeah.
They're actually the string pullers by the Sasquatch. So they built all that underground shit at the Colorado airport is where they go to.
That's where they go to
have
meet.
their con.
They just go down to the underground tunnel network.
People con.
Yeah.
They eat us. Anyway, yeah, that was a fun one. Check out grimerica.ca/support, of course, for all the different ways you can help us out.
Keep us ad free.
Yeah.
Keep the temptation of ads off us.
That's right. Yeah, check that out. There's a bunch of different levels there, anywhere from $1 a month to $30 a month. If you want a custom number, let me know, and I can email you out a custom amount. Or if you want to do a one-time donation, that helps a lot too. Absolutely. But yeah, the monthlies are great. So if you can, do it up. Had a new monthly today, actually.
Oh, good. Thanks for supporting the show. It really does make a difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we couldn't do it without you, really.
No,
we couldn't keep this up without
There's no way we'd still be doing this
No.
if we wouldn't have started getting support at some point.
Yeah.
Just would have got too expensive. Eventually, something would have happened that we wouldn't have had the money to pay the fucking this bill 1 month or that bill 1 month, and then that would have been it. You got to be consistent in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys. Thanks a bunch. Check out that. You can review the show, support the show.
Yeah, send us
spam
emails.
the show.
Instagram. Find us everywhere.
Tweet the show. Facebook. Like us on Facebook. And, sign up for the newsletter.
Send us your cryptid stories.
Seriously, 1% of you motherfuckers that are signed up for the newsletter. 1%, maybe 2% tops. Unacceptable. Do it now. Grimerica.ca/news.
Sign your friend up.
Sign up, you and your friend. So next week, I expect that number to be at 110% of the listeners. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Grimerica.ca.